If everyone could please take a seat, our program will begin in just a minute. Welcome everyone to the Sine Institute's event, Overcoming Political Polarization, with our 2024 fellow, Governor Larry Hogan. To welcome you today is Samantha Hessel, Chair of the Sine Institute's Student Advisory Group.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Hessel, and I'm a current sophomore here at American University. I serve as a student associate to the Governor Larry Hogan, and as Ava said, I'm also the current chairwoman of the 2023-2024 Student Advisory Board. First, I would like to begin by welcoming Governor Hogan alongside of our guests, Governor Jared Polis, and Governor Spencer Cox. As a Colorado native, yep. As a Colorado native, I'll refrain from playing favorites in the spirit of bipartisanship. Governor Hogan is one of the Sine Institute's Spring Fellows here at American University. This is the first of 3 sessions the governor will lead, all centered around common sense for the common good. Governor Hogan was elected as the 62nd governor of Maryland in 2014 and re-elected in 2018, only the second Republican in state history to do so. Under his leadership, Maryland produced the greatest economic turnaround in America, going from 49th in the country to 6th. He reduced the costs of healthcare premiums by over 30%, made historic investments in education, transportation, and infrastructure, and protected the environment, all while overcoming his personal battle against cancer. Governor Hogan left office in 2023 with an over 70% approval rating across all demographics, which is a testament to his work across the aisle. Work across the aisle. This phrase is common here in Washington, but rarely do politicians make an effort to engage in a discussion with an individual with whom they disagree. Today, this seminar will be an exception to normal polarizing behavior in creating moments like these is becoming critically important. America is facing a fork in a road that will decide the fate of my generation and the generations that come after me. We have devoted our practices and beliefs to trying to win arguments rather than work across the aisle and work with people and encourage oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Give me a minute. We have devolved from our practices of civil discourse and turned towards seeking political wins through argumentative performance. As a young person, I'd like to thank everyone on this stage for fighting against this type of behavior, and I encourage our audience today to engage in conversations like these after you leave. Our guests have vastly different ideologies and beliefs. However, in order to learn and expand our understanding of each other, we have to step outside of our own boxes of familiarity. I urge you all to prioritize conversations with people who have views opposite to yours, while keeping in mind that your motives should stem from empathy, not divisiveness. Whether it occurs in this room or on a national stage, we should all strive to disagree better. Now, Governor Hogan will say a few words to get us started. Thank you.
How about a big round of applause for Samantha? That's a wonderful kickoff. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really good job. See, that's a tough act to follow, Govs. But I want to thank President Burwell and American University. I want to thank Amy Dacey and the Sine Institute. It's great to be back here at American University. American University has a special place in my heart. Both my father and my wife received master's degrees here at American, and last year I was honored to receive an honorary doctorate degree when I was the commencement speaker 2023 for the School of Public Policy. I'll admit that my degree required a lot less work than most of the real degrees that all of you are working hard to get. I appreciate Tiffany Waddell agreeing to moderate this discussion today. Tiffany was a wonderful part of our administration. She served as a senior advisor and as director of federal relations for the state of Maryland, ran our Washington office, and I'm proud that now she is the director of government relations for the National Governors Association. And I want to give a shout out to a few of the other Hogan Rutherford administration alumni that joined us today. Mostly a big thank you to all the students and the faculty and the distinguished guests who have joined us this morning. And most especially, I want to welcome and thank Governor Spencer Cox and Governor Jared Polis for agreeing to be here for this really important discussion. I'd also like to just thank the National Governors Association team for helping put this event together with the Sine Institute. I had the honor of serving as the chair of the National Governors Association myself, and I think that NGA is really a shining example of how it is possible to find common ground for the common good. Every NGA chair gets to pick an initiative, a chair's initiative to focus on. Mine was on rebuilding America's infrastructure, which we were focused on in a year-long initiative. And Governor Cox developed his initiative, which I really love, which is about taking on, this broken politics and finding a way to disagree better. And it's something I've been passionate about, and I want to thank you. When I was chair, we were focused on infrastructure, and then we had the worst global pandemic in 100 years break out, and we also had another task to take on. And I can tell you that, on infrastructure, we brought together all 50 governors with a recommendation that sort of helped us to become, we have to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill and find middle ground. And on COVID, it really was the nation's governors who stepped up and led. And so in spite of all the noise and all the things you hear about, it really was governors coming together to keep people safe and to save lives and livelihoods. And I'm really proud of the organization for all of their effort. We typically see each other, the governors see each other a couple times a year at a conference. We're busy running our own states. During COVID, we were having multiple Zooms and phone calls every single week to try to work on that crisis with the White House and with the entire administration. So thanks to the NGA, it was an unprecedented level of cooperation among the governors, and we did all work together. And I'm pleased that the work of the NGA is really continuing under the leadership of current chair, Utah Governor Cox. This is his initiative, Vice Chair from Colorado, Governor Jared Polis. They come from different sides of the aisle, and don't agree on every issue, but they have been working together on this wonderful initiative called Disagree Better, which is, I think, desperately needed. It's an initiative that's focusing on reminding Americans how to persuade rather than to demean each other. They're holding a series of bipartisan events across the country. And this Disagree Better initiative is taking a look at the problems of polarization with governors, showing what disagreeing better really can look like. So this is something I'm passionate about. It's what I'm focusing my fellowship on here at American University. The divisiveness and dysfunction that we see in Washington only makes our country weaker. And as we gather here today, America is at a critical turning point. Most Americans are thoroughly convinced that we're hopelessly divided, that Washington is completely dysfunctional, and that our political system is fundamentally broken. The voices of the exhausted majority are often ignored in deference to the loudest and angriest few who seem hell-bent on tearing America apart. But our nation's strength comes from that exhausted majority of Americans who are really fed up with status quo politics as usual and who are united in defense of the values that make our nation great. We can't address the difficult issues facing our nation unless we're willing to work across the aisle with those with whom we disagree. And we must work to overcome the wedge politics and the petty rhetoric that's used to belittle adversaries, to inflame partisan divisions in America. We've got to be a nation that tolerates contrary views among a diverse citizenry without calling them names or turning them into enemies or doubting their patriotism. So I can think of no better way to kick off my Sine Fellowship here at American University than to bring together two former colleagues and friends, Governor Cox and Governor Polis, for this very timely and important discussion. So thank you all for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Governor Hogan, and thank you, Samantha, for that kind introduction. And thank you, American University, for the opportunity to gather three distinguished governors who are known for bridging the partisan divide and leading our nation in some of the toughest public policy challenges we've seen in decades. I'd like to welcome Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who serves as the chair of the National Governors Association. Governor Cox has a long track record of public service, serving as a county councilman, mayor, county commissioner, and state legislature before being appointed to Utah's lieutenant governor in 2013. He was sworn in as governor in January 2021. During his first term in office, Governor Cox cut $1.1 billion in taxes, implemented land use changes to water law and water conservation and infrastructure planning, locked in record funding for education and teachers, enacted universal school choice, and secured funds for affordable housing. He's married to First Lady Abby Palmer Cox, and they have 4 children. We're very excited to have Emma Kate join us for some of the NGA festivities this week. I'd also like to welcome Colorado Governor Jared Polis, who also serves as NGA's vice chair. Governor Polis is an entrepreneur, education leader, and public servant. He has launched several successful companies, some of which you may have heard: Pro Flowers, an online florist, and BlueMountain.com, an electronic greeting card website. Governor Polis also founded schools for at-risk students and new immigrants and started nonprofits to help veterans and entrepreneurs. Prior to serving as governor, Polis served on the State Board of Education, where he worked to raise pay for teachers and reduce class sizes for students. He also represented Colorado's 2nd Congressional District for 5 terms. As governor, Polis delivered universal free full-day kindergarten, signed a number of bills to save families money on health care, and made significant progress towards the goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040, all while cutting taxes for small businesses and investing in affordable housing and transportation. Governor Polis is married to First Gentleman Marlon Reese, and they have 2 children. So today we will focus on how these 3 leaders have worked to bridge the partisan divide. Each of our governors has governed under different party dynamics. Governor Cox and Governor Polis You both serve in states where a trifecta party control, meaning both chambers and the governorship are held by the same party. In Utah, that's a Republican majority, and in Colorado, that's a Democratic majority. Now, Governor Hogan, you famously served the state of Maryland as a Republican, while both chambers were controlled by the Democratic Party. Governor Hogan, let's start with you. What is your secret for working across the aisle, and what is it going to take to get our country in a more civilized discourse?
Well, thank you very much, Tiffany. And by the way, I just noticed that not only are we all in agreement on bipartisanship, but the three of us are members of the Follically Challenged Caucus. I think that all is beautiful. Another thing we have in common. Look, I was elected in Maryland, which is the bluest state in America. We had only elected one statewide elected official in 50 years, and 70% of both houses of my legislature were progressive Democrats. And so I was a little bit of a, where did this guy come from and why is he sharing our sandbox when I came into town? And I think they expected it to be a really volatile, we're going to have these huge fights. But I said when I was in my very first inaugural, I said that the politics that have divided our nation need not divide our state. And I pledged to all the folks of Maryland, it's more than 2-to-1 Democrat to Republican, that I was going to usher in a new era of bipartisan cooperation where the best ideas rise to the top based on the merit and regardless of which side of the aisle they come from. And that's exactly how we did govern. It wasn't always easy. We did have strong, passionate disagreements on topics, but I always tried to, I think we all agreed on what the problems were, and we sometimes have different ideas on what the solutions are. But if you listen and you're open to discussions, and we were willing to compromise and willing to try to find that middle ground where we could all stand together, we were able to accomplish amazing things for our state. And the people of Maryland seemed to appreciate it because they kept me there for a while and reelected me. And when we left, it seemed like they were happy that we had job approval because they're so tired of the divisiveness and the angry politics that they were like, this is refreshing, actually working with people with whom you disagree in a civilized manner. And we weren't out there attacking one another. And I think today it's even more in demand than ever, which is why this initiative that these two great governors are working on there's a big appetite for it all across the country.
Thank you, Governor Hogan. Governors Cox and Polis, I'd also like to hear from you. What is it going to take to get our country in a more civilized discourse? Governor Cox, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's great to be here at American University. I'm so honored, so excited to be here with my amazing colleagues. I will just say I've always been a little jealous of Governor Hogan. If you paid attention at all, and I'm sure you probably haven't, but the most popular governors in the United States over the past 10 years have been red governors in blue New England states. And I think it's really fascinating because Governor Hogan, Charlie Baker in Massachusetts, you just see this trend. And I think it's because of what he said. I truly do believe that there is an exhaustive majority out there. The polling shows us that 75% of Americans hate what's happening in politics right now, but we don't know exactly how to fix it. And this question, I could spend all day just talking about this very question. I won't, but I don't have a simple fix except to say this. It's going to take all of us. This problem didn't happen overnight. And it's no one person's fault. I know it's very easy to point to a major political candidate, maybe of my party, and say that's what happened. And I would push back very strongly on that. That's not true. We were headed this direction for a long time, and we're continuing in this direction. What I will say is I think, as I've talked to experts all over the country, there is kind of at the core of this, there is, some of you may have read a famous book that's now been out over 20 years. Dr. Robert Putnam from Harvard wrote a book called Bowling Alone. right? This started to see these trends that Americans were lonelier than ever before, that we were losing the institutions that brought us together and kept us together. We're less religious than we've been before. And historically, when Alexis de Tocqueville was here in the 1830s, he saw all these volunteer institutions, especially churches, that brought people together. There was a sense of community, a sense of working together for common goals. And as we've gotten away from those institutions, whether it's religious or otherwise, volunteer institutions, we've become withdrawn, and we have fewer friends, real friends than ever before. And then you layer social media on top of that, right? Which is, I think, where things really got off the rails. Cable news started it, but then social media just threw fuel on the fire. And so we find ourselves without as many real friends and connections and neighbors, but we're wired for connection. We need it. So we start looking for tribes, and we're finding unhealthy tribes. So we hate the same people together on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, right? And that's where we're finding that unhealthy connection. So politics is replacing so many of those connections that we had before. And look, guys, it's so much easier to tear down than it is to build up. In every facet, it's just true. I worked construction for a couple summers, and whenever we got to demolish a building, it was so much fun, you guys. Just knocking down walls and things are fine. It takes a couple hours and that structure is gone. Structures that it took sometimes years to build, you can tear down. And the same is true of our friendships and our political discourse. And so what's it going to take to help us turn the tide? Well, we can't wait for the politicians to do it. I'm so grateful that there are governors like Jared Polis and others and Larry Hogan who are willing to do this work. The governors, we've been described as the last adults in the room when it comes to politics, and that's mostly true. There are some governors still at the kids' table who like to fight, but mostly that's true. But it really is incumbent on all of us. We have to demand more. We have to expect more. We have to be careful about what we post on Instagram and Facebook and the way we talk about those people who are trying to destroy our country, those people who hate America, who really aren't that different than us, but it's easier to tear them down.
Thank you, Governor. And Governor Cox.
Polis.
Polis.
We look the same.
Easy. But by the way, he always has the best shoes.
Yeah.
He's got his Colorado shoes on, if you can see those. Yeah.
I hear the Snickers ball is.
Disagree better is it's also not just about what we traditionally call partisan disagreements. It's fascinating. That's kind of where we often go. But obviously, in states like Utah and Colorado, with the large governing party, majorities in both chambers of the legislature, many of the disagreements that Governor Cox and I deal with every day are within our own parties. You also have challenging global issues, international issues like Israel, Palestine, right? Not in any way partisan, but how can the world, or in our own little cases, any discussions among our constituents, elevate and have constructive ways of dialogue about issues that people have very different opinions on. And of course, first of all, it's okay to acknowledge it's okay to have different opinions. That's not a bad thing. That's a wonderful thing. If we were all the same, life wouldn't be very interesting, would it? But it's really about how we conduct ourselves through this disagreement and how we can disagree in an effective way, a better way. Hopefully some of you who are students here participate in different kinds of debates and forums and those sorts of things. And sometimes those are lacking outside of the world of academia, where people are firing at one another and assailing the motives of one another, rather than actually engaging on whatever the underlying issue is, regardless of whether it's a dispute between people who happen to be of different parties or the same party, or of different issues, whatever they are.
Thank you. Governors, who else outside of governors is addressing polarization? And can you share your experience with any of those outside groups? Governor Hogan, I'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I think that Governor Cox said something about the governors are mostly, the grown-ups in the room, and there's a few at the kids' table. I would agree with that. But one thing I found out about the National Governors Association, they have a thing called the seminar for new governors when you first get elected. I call it baby governor school, where they come teach you how to be a governor. And I noticed the first time I didn't really know who all the governors were. I wasn't paying attention to every state. And I noticed right away that I couldn't tell who the Democrats and Republicans were. And they're not suiting up with red and blue uniforms. And we had great discussions with all of them, sharing best practices. And it's one of the things that's great about this organization. I think the folks in Washington really could learn a lot from the governors and how we work together in a more bipartisan fashion. But I think people are coming together across the country. We are seemingly more divided than ever, but I think there's more that unites us than divides us. And I think the governors having this discussion, me having my fellowship here, are not the only ones that are talking about it. There are people in communities across America that are saying, how do we stop the divisiveness, and how do we come together, and how do we listen to one another? There are faith groups, there are civic organizations, there are students that really care about this. You know, I gave us before. I shouldn't give a shout out to another school, but before I did my fellowship here at American, I was doing one at the University of Chicago, and there were students who passionately disagreed, but we really did have civil dialogues about the issues and why they were passionate about them without the kind of bashing and name calling. And so I think, you know, that some of the young people here today are really our opportunity to fix these things. I don't know if the three of us are going to be able to fix it all, but we're going to try to get it in the right direction. But it's the folks here that are going to make a difference.
Amen. Yeah, yeah. I've been very fortunate as part of this year-long initiative that runs from July to July to be able to travel all over the country and meet these groups that Governor Hogan talked about that are doing this type of work, and they are all over. I was kind of surprised to see how many people are engaged in this work, and part of what we're trying to do is to elevate them. We've got literally dozens of them. You can go to the National Governors Association website and find the list of groups there. I can share a couple with you right now. There's a group called Braver Angels. They work on college campuses a lot. They do debates on college campuses. Fascinating. I would encourage you, if you haven't, to have them come and do a debate here. Everybody in the room participates in the debate. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but by the end of it, people love it. The debate rules require you to treat each other with respect, and yet, as Governor Polis said, it's so important. Disagree better, and these groups, it's not about just getting along. It's not just being nice to each other, although we certainly need more of that. It's about disagreeing passionately and staying true to what you believe in, but not tearing down the other person, not using contempt to dehumanize the other side. And that's something that Braver Angels models. There are other groups. More in Common is one. Common Ground is another one. Lots of these groups that are doing this work, and universities too. Stanford has a policy lab that has been running experiments on how to depolarize us as a nation. Other universities are doing that as well. I love what you're doing here. You are a great example of exactly what we're talking about, and I do truly believe that your generation are going to help us out of this. Look, this is new. This is not how we've always done things in the country. Right? Growing up for me, I mean, when I went to college, we debated fiercely, and then we all went out and had dinner together, and just you know, we were best friends, even though we were passionately disagreeing. This idea that we can't associate with people who disagree with us, that we label each other with our political labels first, that was the last thing. I didn't know who the Republicans and Democrats were in my town, in my church, in my family. Nobody cared. We didn't talk about that. And now it's the first way we label each other. And so that has to change, and we're relying on you to help us do that.
And Governor Polis.
Well, I think that there's a lot of great examples of what's going right as well. I mean, people that fundamentally try to bring people together through discussion, and that's exciting, because that's exactly what we need. We know that governors alone can't somehow, you know, wave a wand and solve this issue. And Governor Cox and I have been making efforts to engage with broader culture and other cultural leaders, and I think that there are voices out there that are doing this. You know, and it's really about how you reach people. I think it's as Governor Hogan said, it's often a welcome message when people hear it, but it's unfortunately all too refreshing in the sense that people don't hear it enough, and it's often overwhelmed by the day-to-day of the very vicious back and forth that you hear, amplified by the algorithms of social media and the way that it rewards that kind of behavior. You even look at models of politicians on both sides of the aisle today. I mean, there's traditional models of problem solvers trying to fix things, but you see people who are basically, and you can come up with their names on both sides, who are basically divisive social media personalities. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, maybe they're also elected officials and politicians, but you barely know it because they are basically out there attacking people and gaining large followings. And so, there's an audience, and no one questions an audience for that. I think what we are saying here, there's also an audience for having discussions in an elevated way, for disagreeing better, for focusing on governing. And it's about how do you reach that audience and how do you also dress it up and make it more interesting.
Thank you. Now, one of the top issues today in this election is immigration. We've all watched the fierce debates in Congress over the recent months. What is your advice to both parties? And Governor Polis, I'll start with you.
Well, it's not that hard really to solve immigration. We need to have real border security and lock down the border, and then we need to expedite all this stuff that takes years and the processes around it. And I don't really think there's major disagreements between Democrats and Republicans, but they both have trouble agreeing, perhaps because they don't see the political rewards of agreeing and want to blame it on the other side or whatever it is. But it's not that hard to improve. There was recently a bipartisan bill in Congress which was stronger than anything I saw during the time I was in Congress, and would have invested tens of billions of dollars in border security and got rid of some of the frivolous asylum applications that are clogging up the system. But it didn't go anywhere. So obviously we have to deal with the issue of states, which I have to say is very frustrating because we don't control our own borders. We don't know who's in our states, and that's not what states are set up to do. And we are receiving, of course, many people that that either shouldn't have been admitted to the country or in a kind of legal limbo for months or years, and it's unclear what we would do our best to help them through that, but no one really benefits when it takes that long to process these sorts of things. So it's a big challenge. Again, I think that let's really start by, and we have a good under Governor Cox's leadership, we started an immigration group of governors, and I think we agreed basically on what we need to do. And again, there's not a lot of on an issue by issue basis, it's not hard to agree, but then it's how do you transform that agreement into actual reality to end a crisis that perhaps some people feel serves their political interests is really the challenge.
I couldn't agree more with everything that he just said. So I won't add too much to it. Just maybe quickly, Governor Polis and I could solve immigration by lunchtime if you let us. We absolutely could. This is not. It's the least controversial. No, I say
it's not that complicated.
I say this all the time. It's the least controversial of all the controversial issues. Almost all Republicans and almost all Democrats actually agree on this one. Democrats believe we should secure the border. Republicans agree that we need to fix legal immigration, and vice versa, obviously, right? And so that's what's so maddening is he referred to kind of the social media personalities that just happen to be elected officials in Congress and otherwise. We call them conflict entrepreneurs in the media and in politics. The people who have no incentive to solve a problem at all. And let me just assure you, there are many conflict entrepreneurs in Congress who, despite what they say on cable news, despite what they say on social media, they really don't want to solve this one. They don't. They benefit too much from it on both sides.
Well, I agree with what both of my colleagues said. This is an issue that should be easy to solve, but it's just like all the other ones where we seem to talk past each other. The two parties try to blame each other. They really don't want a solution because they get more benefit out of bashing the other guys for whatever their position is. And so, look, we've got to secure the border and we've got to fix the broken immigration system. They are not that hard to do, but it seems like sometimes the performative politics, the performative arts school of politics that some of them come from, the Republicans might only talk about a border with no discussion about how to fix the immigration system. And Democrats are like, we don't care about border security. We just want to talk about what we're going to do to help these immigrants and how we're going to get people into the country. But behind closed doors, everybody says, yeah, why don't we come together and fix this? But it doesn't play well on cable TV and on social media. But this is a perfect example where we should be able to find bipartisan cooperation. We just probably won't find it before November. I think after all the fighting and the election is over with, maybe we'll sit down and the grown-ups can take over. I just want to add one quick thing. You talked about different groups doing different things. I started an organization 5 years ago called America United, which has been focused on these kinds of things. And I was recently the co-chair with Joe Lieberman of a group called No Labels. They have a group called the Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress that really does work to try to bring people together in the middle. And one disagreement this is a disagree better.
Yes.
When Governor Cox called me a New England governor, I just want to tell you, Maryland is Maryland is south of the Mason-Dixon line.
I know it's not technically, New England, but for those of us in the West, it's all the same.
I thought we were going to stop the name calling. You know?
We'll call you an Amtrak corridor governor.
That's probably closer.
Thank you, Governor. Now, founded in 1908, 116 years ago by Teddy Roosevelt, the National Governors Association is the collective voice of our nation's governors. NGA elects a chair who serves a one-year term, alternating by party. Governor Hogan, Governor Cox, and soon-to-be Governor Polis have all joined the ranks of this prestigious club as NGA chairs, having been elected by their peers. Augustus Wilson, Buford Ellington, Bill Clinton, and Dirk Kempthorne are a few of the notable former chairs. As chair, you have the opportunity to choose an initiative. Governor Cox, as the current chair of the NGA, your initial initiative is titled Disagree Better. Why have you shied away from descriptions of your initiative as encouraging civility? Can you talk about why we shouldn't be satisfied with mere civility and instead focus on healthy conflict?
Sure, thank you. It really is an honor to serve as the chair of the NGA. I was lieutenant governor and then became governor when this guy was chair, and I was always admired the work that he was doing around infrastructure. He's one of the reasons we did get the bipartisan infrastructure bill several months ago, and as we were looking at this and what we wanted to do and knowing kind of what we wanted to accomplish, I think civility properly understood is what we're trying to do, but I don't think civility is properly understood. And so that's why we were very careful about selecting a name for this initiative, Disagree Better, and speaking about healthy conflict. I get two criticisms whenever I talk about Disagree Better. One of them is kind of the civility criticism, and that civility is you just want us to all get along. You want us to get rid of the things that we believe in. We can't disagree with the other side. We just have to, civility is just being nice. And I think politics is about passion. I think politics is about anger and being angry because you want a better world and you think that there's a better way to do that. I have no problem with any of that. So we want to disagree to actually be the first word of this, to let people know that it's okay to disagree. We wanted to talk about healthy conflict because conflict is neutral. Conflict is neither good nor bad. What we're seeing today is a toxic conflict, a very unhealthy conflict, a conflict that a pluralistic society like ours can't long survive. You can't. I think there's nothing more un-American than hating your fellow Americans. As the person who followed you as governor, Governor Wes Moore often says that you can't love America if you hate half of the country. Right? And that's unhealthy conflict. But healthy conflict, and we've all had these experiences where you kind of let something slide and you don't bring it up. Maybe it's a roommate who doesn't, wash the dishes and leaves them piled up in the sink. And when you finally have that, when you care about the person enough to say, hey, we need to have this discussion, and then you're like, why did I wait so long to actually do that? Right? That's healthy conflict. That's a good thing. I just want to share one quick thing. Had a very controversial bill come through the state of Utah recently, and somebody I know disagreed with me, a friend, and she came up to me and she said this. She said she grabbed me by the shoulders, right, and she said, "Hey, I'm really mad at you right now, but I love you. Can we talk about this decision that you made?" See, that to me is healthy conflict. That to me says to my fellow Americans, to my Democrats, I'm really mad at you right now. I'm really mad at you, President Biden, but I love our country and I want you to be successful. Can we talk about this, and I think there's a better way to do it. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do, and hopefully we can get there.
One other, I think, sometimes misconception of this is it means everybody should be like a moderate and try to slice the issue in the middle. That's not at all what this means. It's extremely valuable to have these kinds of discussions. I mean, look at the differences between, say, some of our founding fathers like Hamilton and Jefferson about the degree of centralization of our country. It's very much okay, and in fact, a treasured part of our democracy that people have profound disagreements. It doesn't simply mean that you have to abandon any of your principles or opinions, but it's about how you disagree and can have those discussions in a way that elevate the discussions rather than attack the motives of the other person or call them un-American or any of the other types of negative commentary that we see today.
Oh,
it used to be better. My dad was in Congress back in the 70s. I was a kid, and they used to passionately debate issues on the floor. They would strenuously disagree and passionately argue their case, but then they would go have dinner together or go have a beer together. I mean, I grew up, their families of the Democratic members were friends, and people put aside, once they compete out on the ball court, and then they go out and enjoyed one another's friendship and company. And now it's like these guys in the Problem Solvers Caucus are attacked because why are you talking to the other side? And they're calling names of the other people just because they have a D or an R. We've got to get back to passionately disagreeing while not being enemies.
Yeah, and Tiffany, I forgot. Sorry, there's a second way I get attacked, and let me just bring that up. The disagree better gets attacked, and it's kind of the opposite of this, the same coin. And you brought it up in that example, and that is the other thing is, why should I engage with those people? Those people hate me or don't want me to exist or whatever. Why would I waste my time engaging with them? And I would submit to you that that's just as dangerous as the people that just want to fight and yell and scream at each other. Because when we disengage, first of all, you can never you can never change a heart and mind, and it's harder to hate up close. I think one of the reasons we're so divided is because we're not spending enough time together. I do think now, obviously, you should never put yourself in a situation where you're at risk or in danger. But too much of the case right now is, especially amongst young people, is this idea that anybody who disagrees with me is a danger to me or a threat to me, and that's just inherently wrong and again inherently dangerous. We do need to get close to people who are different than us. We need to get out of our not just out of our comfort zones, but out of our echo chambers where we only hear the people who say what we want to say, that confirm our own biases, pat ourselves on the back, and think we're amazing. You'll find you can learn a lot. Sorry, I'm talking too long, but I just want to say this. Somebody shared a quote from C.S. Lewis last night that I loved, talking about he had a good friend whom they saw the world completely differently, and they debated all of the time. And he said something that was profound. I'd never heard this before, but he said, we did not debate for victory, we debated for truth. And that's a different type of engagement, a different type of debate where you're engaging with someone, trying to find truth and learning from that other person, even if you disagree.
Very good insights. Now, Governor Polis, what are you and your fellow governors doing to spread the word about Disagree Better?
Well, we hosted one of the regional events in Colorado with Governor Cox. Several other governors attended, and a part of the focus of that one was actually academia and how universities and community colleges can really lead the way in this effort. I'm proud to report back Colorado State University offers now a course in Disagree Better. 50 students were in it this last semester, pretty good enrollment. And they are making that more widely available and looking to expand that in the future. But it's also about, this was also in the context of, again, very profound disagreements on campus. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing to experience as a young person, to see different viewpoints. But, not if it means people yelling in each other's face and spitting, but if they sit down to talk. And so hopefully that's something that our campus leaders here can do. There's a number of campus-based organizations that presented to us. I'm not sure which ones may or may not be here at AU, but hopefully some of them are. That kind of work to foster this kind of dialogue. Obviously, many of the members of the campus community, especially at an institution like AU, of course, being future leaders of the country as well.
Thank you. Now, Governors Cox and Polis, I know you've toured the country over the last 6 months discussing the Disagree Better initiative. What are some of the lessons you've learned over the past 6 months?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I get to be around incredibly bright people and to learn from them. We've had these convenings, as Governor Polis mentioned. We had one in New Hampshire. We had one in Colorado. We're here in D.C. this week. We'll be in Nashville and in May, and then we'll finish in Salt Lake City. And everywhere I go, I get new insights. One of my favorite insights actually came from when we were in Colorado, when we were talking about disagree better on college campuses. This was actually before kind of the now infamous hearing that happened on Capitol Hill with the presidents of Harvard and MIT and Penn. And we were talking about thought diversity and the kind of the founding of our country and the way this has gone over time. And there was an expert there that was talking about that we are living in George Washington. By the way, it's his birthday today, and I did wear my George Washington socks, if any of you are wondering.
Nice.
But we are living in Washington's and Madison's worst nightmare. And he talked about, of course, in his farewell speech, and I hope you'll all read it today since it is his birthday, his farewell address. George Washington warned against partisans and that division that it could cause in our country. What's interesting, though, is I'm like, well, yeah, he said that, and then we immediately went to kind of a two-party system. And while we've changed the two parties, and it's gotten polarized, we literally did have a civil war, which was, I think, arguably worse than now, when 600,000 people died. But that being aside, why did it take this long to end up in their worst nightmare? That was about an issue, not necessarily about parties. This is really party driven. And he talked about the great sort that has happened over the past 20 years. And that great sort is the parties themselves were very diverse historically. So, for example, the Democratic Party historically had lots of conservative Democrats in the South. The Republican Party had lots of liberal Republicans in the New England states, north of Maryland or wherever this governor is from. And so the parties themselves had some competition of ideas, but over the past 20 years, that great sort has changed. And again, with the advent of social media now, we very much figured out how to divide ourselves almost perfectly. If you look at Congress now, there's nobody in kind of that center. The most conservative Democrat and the most liberal Republican are pretty far apart, where they used to cross, and you had this group in the middle, as we would call it, that actually got things done. So in the 70s, there were about 250 members of the House who were kind of in that middle, in between the most conservative Democrat and the most liberal Republican, if that makes sense. The last I saw, there were 4 people in that as you rank them on the polarization scale. And so that's why nothing's getting accomplished. Anyway, I just share that because it was very insightful to me to kind of understand how through history we got to this moment and what it's going to take to get us out of that. But I'm so grateful that there are really smart people, including smart people in this room, who are thinking about this and engaging with us and helping us figure out how to do this better.
Governor Polis, what are some of the lessons you've learned over the last 6 months?
Well, I think I was very pleased to see the number of folks doing work in this area. And as governors, we wanted to uplift a lot of those nonprofits, NGOs that are already doing this work. Governor Cox mentioned Braver Angels. There's a number of others that unless you're close to it, you wouldn't necessarily know about all the folks doing this work. So I think that was very exciting to see. I hope that they feel that we gave them a boost, which was certainly part of what we hope to do with that ongoing work. And to elevate that work. I think it's also met a great reception among our fellow governors, which is welcome and good news as well. The people that are the senior executives in each state had very strong buy-in to this initiative, and are each undertaking initiatives in their own way. One of the challenges that we tried to get governors to do, and many of them did, I don't know, perhaps you know the number, but we
22 now,
sort of sat down with somebody that they disagree with and modeled this. It could have been a legislative leader from the other party. It could have been a local elected official. Governor Cox and I sort of kicked this off with at a place in the middle of the desert of Utah. I don't know where we were because we were geothermal stuff.
We were in Cedar City, Utah.
Yeah, Cedar City. And so we now have close to half the governors that have kind of modeled this themselves in different ways and done this in a public way. And many of them have also challenged others in their state to undertake this work as well.
Governor Hogan, how do we get better as a country?
Oh, you saved the hard question for me. There is no magic wand, but I think, look, I think leaders like this and programs like this and having these kinds of discussions is a big part of it. I mean, I think I've never been more concerned about where we are as a nation. And, back to, you mentioned George Washington. George Washington said, political parties were going to be the ruination of our republic. And he gave his first farewell address in our State House in Annapolis when he resigned as commander of the Continental Forces. And I referenced that in my farewell address out of the oldest State House in America. I think it's going to take us all trying to figure out a way to solve this divisiveness and dysfunction. I agree we're always going to passionately disagree, and that's okay. We've got to fix the way we go about it, because I think it's not just the politicians. We're having these kinds of fights and arguments among families and communities, and the anger and the tension and the lack of listening is continuing to worsen. I think a big part of it is cable news, continuing. We're only gathering our information from one source. The social media is exacerbating and accelerating the problems along with disinformation. But I think things like this are a good start. Just having the dialogue and trying to figure out. I think most people, 70-some% of the people in America, as I refer to as the frustrated majority, are really sick and tired of it. And that's good, because that means maybe we're all willing to sit down and try to figure out how to solve it. But again, I'll say it's the young people here. I don't think we're going to wave a magic wand and get it fixed too quickly. But this next generation, I think, hopefully can keep us heading in the right direction, get back to normal.
Governors Cox and Polis, what advice do you have for the students in the room about the importance of healthy conflict? And what can they do now to foster a culture on their campus of free expression? Governor Cox, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, you guys, I can't emphasize enough what Governor Hogan just said, that this is, to me, the most important issue in America today. And I want to elevate it to become an issue like other political issues. So when you're asking somebody who's running for office about their position on abortion or immigration, you also ask them, what is your position on polarization, and how are you going to help to depolarize our country? So my advice to you is pretty simple. There are some simple things that we can do. One is value relationships, again, with people that are different than you. 30% of Americans have ended a familial relationship over politics. Okay? That's an astounding number, and a scary number to me. So care about people first and issues second. The next one is to actually again be willing to step into that discomfort and have a disagreement, a healthy disagreement. Now, let me tell you how to do this, okay? I'm going to give you a very simple formula to how to make this work, and it works 99% of the time. I've tried it. I forget sometimes. I'm not good at this, but I try. Okay, so here's all you have to do. This is the magic question request. It's tell me more about why you feel that way. Okay. So when somebody's angry at you, somebody's disagreeing with you, instead of thinking, okay, I got to fight back, I got to get my best argument, I got to win this one, go the opposite direction. It does many things. So it disarms the other person because they're usually not expecting it. It tells them that you're actually interested in them, that you care about what they think. Sometimes, well, let me get to the third one. The third thing it does is it gives you a chance to cool down. Okay, and I need that. Sometimes I have to ask them 2 or 3 times just because I've got to catch my breath and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to fight. And so it gives me a chance to calm down. fourth thing it does is it requires them to actually think about what they believe. Far too many of us just take our cues from cable news or social media. We've never really thought through it. We just know that my tribe believes this on Israel and Hamas, or my tribe believes this on immigration. So I'm just going to say whatever Tucker Carlson said last night, or whatever they said on MSNBC last night. So it requires the other person to think through what they're doing. And then if you're generous and you actually listen to understand instead of listening to fight, they're much more likely to give you the same opportunity to share what you believe and why you believe it. And the coolest thing is, most of the time, sometimes this does not happen. Sometimes you just have to say, well, we just disagree on this. But sometimes what you'll find is when you get down to the core of tell me more about why you believe that, you find out you have something in common. It may get down to we both love our country. We just grew up in different ways. We grew up in different parts of the country. Governor Moore and I had this conversation. He grew up in Maryland, in kind of an inner city, right, where guns were very dangerous and terrible things happened. I grew up in rural America. Every day in high school, I drove an old truck to school with a gun in my truck. I had a shotgun or a 22 or a 30-06, depending on what we were hunting after school that day. Now you're all looking at me like, you had a gun in your car on the way to school? Everybody had a gun in their car on the way to school. And that's just what we did. So again, we had very different backgrounds. So when we understand that, now we see how we've come to maybe different conclusions, and we can start to have a productive conversation. So that's my advice to all of you. And we need you more than ever. Our campuses have to be the place where there is freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, where we don't cancel people because we disagree with them, where we protest those people that we disagree with, and we protest them passionately, but we give them the space to do that, where there is this freedom of debate, where there is diversity of thought. Diversity of thought is so important, and we need more of that on college campuses.
Governor Polis, advice for our students.
Well, I think that's great advice from Governor Cox, and I just think take advantage of the time that you're a student here, because you have access to all of these conversations in a way that, part of what's also begun happening with kind of this sorting is not only in Congress, but also people tend to live. They're more likely to have their neighbors are more likely to agree with them politically, and who they hang out with is more likely. So, I mean, you are at a point of kind of maximum exposure here. There's clubs and student-run groups on all sides with different opinions, and take advantage of that opportunity while you're here to do a lot of that work that Governor Cox was talking about. It's certainly not impossible to do after that, but it takes a little bit more effort. It's not just showing up, talking to a campus meeting across campus. It just takes more effort as we go on through life. And you might not be around or be exposed to people with as many different ideas as you are during this time that you're in college.
Switching gears, I'd now like to take a few questions from our student associates. So our student associates, if you would please join us up at the podium. We ask students to submit questions ahead of time. So let's begin with Andrew Murray.
Thank you all so much for coming. The first question I have here today is, what does bipartisanship mean to all of you?
Well, this is something I've been passionate about. I said my very first inaugural address back in January of 2015, I addressed we were going to usher in a new era of bipartisanship. This discussion is about disagreeing better. We're going to passionately disagree, but bipartisanship to me means the kinds of things we're talking about. We've got to work together between, no one of us has all the answers or all the power. We're a country that's pretty closely divided. And bipartisanship is trying to find that middle ground where we can all stand together, and by disagreeing better and reaching real common sense solutions that aren't Republican ideas or Democratic ideas, but the right ideas to solve the important problems facing the country.
Yeah, Tiffany mentioned that our states are very different, and so I live in a state with a super majority Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate, right? And so we do not need a single Democrat vote to do anything in our state, including override the governor in a veto, right? So this is where
that sounds pretty nice, actually. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, no, it's you didn't. I don't know that we think it's nice all the time. So sometimes sometimes you need those other voices. But my point is this: so bipartisanship is even if you don't have to have the support of the other party, you still work to do it. And you would be surprised that in Utah, 90% of the bills pass with unanimity or near unanimity. Probably 93 to 94% of them pass on a bipartisan scale. Democrats pass far more pieces of legislation than you would think in our state. Now, they will also they would if they were up here, they would say it's still far too partisan, and I get that. But bipartisanship means making sure everyone has a seat at the table and a voice. It doesn't mean they always get to win. It does not mean that. Sometimes politics is zero sum. Sometimes your bill passes or it doesn't. But it's looking for a non-zero sum win when you can. Look for those win-wins, and they do exist. Can you change your bill a little bit to give the other side a win? If you can do that, you should. And we see more of that happening at the state level than we certainly see in Congress.
In my state, 70% Democrats, both houses, and we could not accomplish a single thing without convincing a majority of Democrats to go along with what we were trying to accomplish. And we got a Democratic legislature. I'm the only governor in America to get a Democratic legislature to cut taxes. And we did it 8 years in a row by $4.7 billion and helped turn our economy around. So it's possible, but it sounds like it might be more fun to just hang out with everybody you agree with.
Not always.
Well, in some ways similar to Utah, where 90% of the bills I sign have bipartisan support, we're the inverse, and that they're one vote shy of being able to override me. So my Senate, but the House can. But when I was elected, one of the things I ran on was we only had half-day kindergarten in our state, and we want free full-day kindergarten for every family, and universal access to preschool. And so right after I was elected, the first legislator I called was a Republican, Representative Jim Wilson of Salida. He had been a former school superintendent, and he had been supportive for many years. He tried to do kindergarten. I said, Jim, I want you to lead our effort on full day kindergarten. And so that's very unusual to have somebody of the opposite party lead the governor's main initiative. He, of course, agreed, was very excited about it. And it wasn't without opposition. I mean, it was not easy to do. As I like to say, if it was easy, it would have been done already. But we got full day kindergarten done then in our first session. And of course, it was solidly bipartisan, and it was led by a member of the minority party in the House, Jim Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd now like to invite up Anshu Pokri, our next student associate.
Hi. So what can we as college students do to help ease the partisan polarization happening in our country, knowing that Congress does not seem to do anything to solve it?
Well, we were talking earlier about the grown-ups in the room. I think actually all of the students here could be the grown-ups in the room, right down the street from our nation's capital, maybe showing a better example. Look, I was in a discussion where there were college Democrats and college Republicans who really disagreed pretty adamantly on everything, but they did seem to have real discussions and really tried to listen to one another, which is a lot different than what we seem to see on Capitol Hill. So I think you can set an example, and I think you can continue to work on things like what we're doing here this morning, and try to help convince some of the folks in Washington where it's broken and the message doesn't seem to be sinking in.
Thank you, Angie. How many students here participated in debate in high school or middle school or now?
Wow.
Okay.
That's a lot.
By definition, if we were to take a poll, you are less polarized than the rest of America right now, and there's a reason for that. So one of the things I like to do, just kind of a thought experiment, is to encourage people. And let me say why. So people who have taken debate before or participated in debate, you'll often get assigned a topic and the side you're arguing on, whether you believe it or not, right? So as a thought experiment, what I encourage people to do is to, if you disagree with somebody on something, choose the other side and argue their side. It sharpens your argument. You can't win an argument if you don't understand the other side, right? I don't get up in front of the legislature and argue that just you should pass this because I believe it's right. I have to explain to them why. And if I understand the arguments against me, I'm much better. Iron sharpens iron, right? We can get better at this. And so doing that, the other thing that happens when you do that is you start to realize, oh, they chose something else not because they're insane or brainwashed or brain dead. There is a thread of logic behind what they're arguing. Now, I may disagree with it, but you'll come to appreciate the other side a little better. And in so doing, by completely understanding the other side, you're much more likely to actually figure out a solution that more people can agree on because you get the other side of that.
Governor Polis?
Oh, I think that was, yeah, well said.
Andrew, thank you.
They disagreed better.
I'd now like to invite our final student associate up, Lindy Murphy.
Hello, I will be reading a question from a student here at AU by the name of Ting. And the question is, liberals and conservatives often can't agree on where to get their trustworthy news from, and media bias can reaffirm the already partisan views, increasing the polarization we've been talking about. So how do you think the media, whether it's kind of the traditional broadcast or digital social media, is affecting or contributing to political polarization, and what do you think the role of media will be in the future?
Well, it's an excellent question. I think it's a huge part of the problem. We sort of are in these echo chambers, and some of the governors talked about this earlier. Depending on where you fall ideologically, you tend to get all of your information from a source that's playing to that group, and so you don't often hear the other diversity of thought. And we have both our media, say cable news. If you're watching Fox News every night, or you're watching CNN or MSNBC every night, you get an entirely different view of every issue and what's going on in the world. And it's hard. Back in the old days, it seemed like when I was younger, there were network news where they actually told you what happened that day without a lot of opinion, and you could make your own decisions. And now it's all mostly talk and opinion, and sometimes skewed opinions. And so social media and cable news and the media in general, where you gather your information, and now most people are consuming information both online, and they're only kind of getting it from the source that they most agree with. So you tend to just hear an echo chamber where you're talking within your tribe and getting each other all fired up without ever listening to the other side of the argument. And I think it's it's helping it's not the cause of the problem, but they're making money as a result of the problem, and it continues to kind of throw gasoline on the fire, so to speak. And I think we've got to figure out, I mean, obviously we have freedom of the press and freedom of speech, and we want people to be able to write and put out whatever they want. We've got to find some way. The media does have a role in trying to keep us from becoming so divided, and to maybe try to show a more balanced side to the issues and to the news of the day.
Yeah. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's more than just now the cable news media. We all recognize what's going on there. I mean, as an example, if you're watching, MSNBC or CNN, they're talking about how Trump is senile and can't tell Nikki Haley from Nancy Pelosi and gets the names wrong of world leaders. And then you sort of superimpose that he's the name of the other guy on Fox, and they say the same thing. So it's like they're both just saying the same thing, but they're saying it about the other person. So if you watch the progressive news all the time, you're saying, wow, Trump has obviously lost it and can't tell people apart, doesn't know world leaders' names. And I don't watch Fox News, but I understand they're saying the same thing about Joe Biden, who to me seems totally on top of it and with it. So I don't get it, but and I don't know Trump personally, so I can't say whether he's with it or not, or whether he was ever with it. I don't know. So, but it's also social media. So that's the cable. We get that. But now it's about reinforcing the views through kind of these algorithms that just show you further and further down these rabbit holes of even to the point of conspiracy theories and bizarre counterfactual testimonies that lead people to incredibly bizarre opinions, including ones that endanger people's lives, namely, for instance, that vaccines are somehow dangerous or harmful and bad for you, and a sizable number of people. Not from the political realm. I mean, Trump and Biden both said get vaccinated, but then it goes down to to other levels, and people are following different conspiracies and at tragic costs. I mean, the case of measles and other diseases. So these things have consequences, and I think getting the accurate information out and data and is incredibly important, as well as making sure that people have critical thinking skills. And so I think that's something we can do a better job of in schools, is making sure that young people develop, and people of all ages, but obviously with the touch point in schools that states are involved with, can develop the critical thinking skills to be able to discern fact from fiction and understand ways that they can observe objective reality in a more correct way.
Yeah, I would just add, read deeply and widely. I've stopped watching cable news 11 years ago, and I've been sober for that long. It's a great feeling. I will just tell you that my marriage improved, my family life got better. There was less contention. I mean this sincerely. This really happened. Our lives were so much better. And social media is kind of the inverse of that. So cable news, they get us addicted to outrage and contempt, which is, there are triggers in the brain, the pleasure centers of our brain, just like gambling or drinking or drugs. Outrage connects to some of the same receptors, and we can get addicted to outrage. So they know that. Social media is kind of the same thing, but it's shallow, right? It's just a quick hit, and traditional media now is using social media to get to us, which means they have to have more outrageous headlines because the algorithms uplift the most extremes and the most outrageous. And so again, read lots of different publications, understand the bias of every publication. They all have one. I read regularly from the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, and I try to read long form articles from different publications, from conservative publications and more liberal leaning publications, so I feel like I can get the whole story of what's actually happening.
Thank you, Lindy. And thank you for this tremendous opportunity. I'm really filled with gratitude today to have had this dialogue with three of our nation's governors. Let me now turn it over to Amy Dacey, Executive Director of the Sine Institute, for final comments.
Thank you. Wow, this is just an incredible looking group. Thank you so much for taking the time today. We are just honored to have all of you here. I want to thank you for your public service. I know we have been doing some polling at the Sine Institute, and there's a concern around, people 18 to 34 years old, do they have faith in institutions and trust? And you taking this on, being in public service, I think is an incredible example to the students here, to all of our people joining us live stream, and to those who will watch the recording after. Like, this is the moment where we see what public service looks like, and really, people who value this work and how it can bring us forward. So I really do appreciate that. Before we close things up, I do, since I have the mic, I get to ask one more question, because I think it's how we're trying to end some of our sessions.
We're done.
They haven't cut my mic off yet, Governor. But I do think it's important, because sometimes, when we talk to students, when we talk to our community, there's so much negative out there, and it can be hard, whether, to your point, Governor Cox, it's online or, conversations. We like to end, kind of on a positive note. So it would be really great. And for this last question, it's more about what makes you hopeful? What makes you optimistic? Is there an example from what's, in your state, or is there something you've seen, or something that brings that to you? Because I think we have to point out those examples too. So maybe we'll start with you, Governor Polis, and work our way down.
Well, I'm glad Jon Stewart's back.
Yeah.
But I am. But I think also people are kind of waking up to some of these dangers of kind of social media and isolation, and kind of trying to break out of the shell. And I hope that has a more positive impact on the types of information people can be exposed to, and how people can engage with one another.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually, I am very optimistic, you guys. I've been pessimistic for a long time. Every Republican quotes a line from Ronald Reagan when he says that liberty is just one generation away from extinction. And I used to quote that all the time. Never believed it, by the way. I was always like, yeah, because this is what I'm supposed to say. And then I'm like, we've been doing this for 250 years. We're fine. And turns out we're not fine. But my point is, this is the optimistic piece of this, and I mean this sincerely. The polling gives me optimism. The fact that a vast majority of our country hates what's happening in politics right now. By the way, they also hate both candidates that are running for president right now, and that's where we're headed. But there is a market failure. And neither party, by the way, they're both minority parties now. The majority of Americans are not affiliated with either party. That's a rejection of what people are saying. So there is a market failure. Eventually, somebody's going to figure this out, and there will be a market correction. And one of the major parties, the first one to figure it out, is going to win by 10 points plus. It's going to be incredible to see. I hope it's my party, but it may not be. But somebody's going to figure this out, maybe a third party. And when they do, good things are going to happen. I believe in us. I believe in America. I believe that we are bigger and better than any one politician or any party. And I believe that when we collectively decide that we're done with this, that we will be done with this. And I believe in you, this next generation. I'm so excited. What I hear on campuses gives me hope for the future, because I truly believe that you can fix all the problems that we're causing right now. So no pressure.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Governor Cox for his initiative, and thank he and Governor Polis for taking time. They have a very busy schedule here in Washington, and thank you both for joining us. Thank you for Sine Institute. And I agree with what both of my friends have said up here. Look, we're at a very divided time in America, but I do believe that there's more that unites us than divides us. And the fact that 70% of the people are disgusted with politics, and that now, more than 40% of the people in America have left both parties, and they're independent. The Democrats and Republicans are about 30%. As 70% of the people in America do not want Joe Biden or Donald Trump to be president. This says to me that we are reaching a turning point where maybe people are starting to be fed up with the extremism and with the divisiveness and dysfunction. But the thing that really makes me most helpful, and I mean this very sincerely, is the young people here in the room. The fact that this room is filled with people who really do care about these issues and that are engaged. That's the thing that makes me sometimes it gets very discouraging and disappointing where you say, we can't fix it, we want to give up. But seeing the young people here today, that's what gives me hope, because the next generation is going to be responsible for getting us back on track. So thank you all for being a part of it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Governor. Let's thank all our speakers again. Just a little bit of housekeeping, if you don't mind. At the Sine Institute, we like to say that what's even more important than you coming and spending the time today is what we do when we leave this room. And so I think some suggestions to keep, if you have this feeling of, yes, I can make a difference, yes, we've got to keep this going. I will say, I want to thank, we worked with a lot of people to put this together, and it flies by so fast. But I want to thank Governor Polis's team, Governor Cox's team, Governor Hogan's amazing Sine Institute, student associates, his group that's coming together that's helping us, and then also the NGA. It took a lot of people to put this all together for you today, so it was their time and their time. So I'd like to give a real big thank you to them as well. And to how I consider my dream team, the Sine Institute team, who's small but mighty, and they work really hard. So I appreciate you. I will say that for the NGA, you can find all this information about Disagree Better on their website. If you go to the NGA website, we encourage you to do that. We encourage you also to sign up for the Sine Institute newsletter, for our social media. There's other things happening on campus. We're going to continue this conversation. We'll also have some of these materials linked up directly to the NGA's materials so that you can do that. There was a lot of questions submitted. I can't even tell you how many questions were submitted for today. Time was really the enemy for us on that. But what we're going to do is make sure, Governor, you and your team have them. You've got a couple more incredible events coming up, so we'll try and weave some of those questions in that. If you took the time today, I encourage you to come on March 7th at 3 o'clock in Kerwin Hall. We have the governor's next seminar. He's going to be spending some more time with us on campus. Look up his events and do that. And we also, You know, it was you, Governor Cox, that said, like, how do we take this out of the room, right? This doesn't always have to be big groups of over 100 people like we did today. I think it is those personal relationships that we have to find out. Get a group of friends together in the dorm or in your apartment, grab a pizza and just say, well, what do you think about this issue? What do you think about this issue? Ask the questions, do that, you know, kind of pay it forward in that respect and how we can keep the hard work of these governors moving forward. I also want to invite you, they got caught in a little bit of traffic, but we are setting up a lovely reception for you outside. Why don't you stay here for a little bit? We've got some wonderful refreshments for you. You can meet some of the people that came today, introduce yourself to somebody else. Don't be afraid to go up and introduce yourself to somebody you might not know, but please stay involved, stay engaged. Like we like to say at Sine, this is about convening, communicating, and collaborating. So let's pay it forward. One more big, huge round of applause for our panel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
First time. Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tiffany,
So kind of you.
Well done.
I'll
Yes.
thank you.
Great job.
Hey,